Dr. Jazz.
Jump in. I saw your schedule,
Jazz.
and you're this year going to be really active with Trio Grande. And,
Somewhat. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And I want, the last album is beautiful. I would like to ask you about it, but like, how did you hook up with these guys? I mean, Gilad probably through Ari, but Antonio. I mean, how did this?
You've spoken to a lot of guys. Like the scene is very like everyone's all kind of involved with each other's business in different ways, and yeah, for sure. The first time I played with Gilad was with Ari. Actually, the connection between all three of us is probably Orlando LeFleming, because as you know, he's an old friend and collaborator of mine, and he was playing. So Ari, for whatever reason, he had two bands that he would alternate at Smalls, and one of them was with me and Kreisberg and like Matt Penman or Danton Boller. And the other one was just trio with Orlando and Gilad. So Ari didn't actually have me and Gilad playing together that much. I don't know why, but then Orlando called us both, Gilad and me, for a gig. I think that was the first time we played together. And then Orlando also connected me with Antonio, because Orlando was playing a lot with David Sanchez, and he did a record. Orlando did a record on which he had Lage and myself and Antonio, and so that was the first time I played with Antonio. Actually, you know what? I did play with Antonio in like 2000
already. Oh wow, man!
Yeah, but that was very random. Down at the Zinc Bar.
Oh really?
So yeah, the first time. Yeah, the old Zinc Bar. The first time we actually played together was Orlando's record. But so that's how we met. But the way the thing came about was, well, I've always wanted to do a bassless trio, and with guitar, and mostly inspired by the Paul Motian trio with Frizzell and Levana. Although I always knew that whatever I was going to do was going to be very different from that. It was, I just thought that was that band had a big impact on me. I saw them several times when I was a teenager, and I always wanted to do that. And I had several aborted attempts, but it's like a difficult thing to do. I didn't really know what it was going to be, and then I would try it with a few different people, and it just was never really like. There was always something missing, there's a bass-shaped hole, and then Gilad was playing. He had like a weekend, a little sort of self-curated festival of Gilad at the Cornelia Street Cafe for 2 or 3 nights, and he was doing like a lot of different. I think it was 3 nights, and he did 6 different bands, and I went down there. One night, and it was Gilad and Antonio and Becca Stevens, and that was the first time that was the first time that Gilad and Antonio had played together, and I went down because I was curious, and because is an old friend too via my wife, and that afternoon, Jerry Teakins from Crisscross. Rest in peace, called me and said, "You want to do a record?" And it was very typical of Jerry, or at least the way that he was with me. And I think he was like this with a lot of different people, because he was like, "Do you want to do another record for Crisscross?" And I was like, "Sure." And he said, "Okay, we're going to record in 3 weeks." This day. And I was like, "Okay." And I was in the middle of the very long process of recording my record 441 with 5 different pianists.
Yeah,
That was taking
I
a
want to
long
ask you about
time.
that.
Availability of those guys was, not abundant. So trying to get that together, it took me 2 years to make that record. And I was in the middle of that, and I was like, well, sure, what am I going to do? I don't want to do anything with piano, because that will just sort of undermine that. And then, sure enough, I went to see Gilad and Antonio and Becca, and I was like, oh, fuck it. I'll do it with these guys, and I'll be Becca, So, and because they sounded great, like it was.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't know what to expect, honestly, from that trio, but it was fantastic. So I was like, all right, there we go. So Crisscross. That was for a Crisscross record, which then came out in
Stockholm Syndrome. No.
Oh no, it's all right with 3.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's that one. Oh sure. Yeah.
2017.
Yeah. Okay.
It came out in 2018. And and so that was that, and it was just like it was a one. How the Crisscross things go. It's just one day, like no rehearsal. Really.
Sure.
I mean, you can rehearsal if you want, but I don't think we did. So then that was done, and then it came out, and I was like, man, that was really fun doing that. I really liked some touring, and so there was a lot of back and forth with those guys, and it ultimately, I mean, both of them are incredibly busy, but
super busy, yeah.
Particularly Antonio, because of all the Pat stuff, and then his kind of solo thing was taking off. And he eventually said, look, my manager is recommending that I don't do any sideman work. And I was like, okay, fair enough. All right, cool. I'll think about the next thing. And then he wrote back and he said, but if it's not a sideman thing, if it's a co-led band, then maybe that will work.
Okay.
And I just thought, man, this is perfect, because not only does this mean it will happen, it also means I don't have to be in charge of the whole thing. And so we recorded a record, and then COVID happened, and so we never toured, didn't do anything. And then ultimately, coming out the other side of the lockdowns, it was just Antonio was so backed up with so much stuff that he had, and so we regrettably just decided we were going to have to. We couldn't wait for him, especially because we like in all likelihood he would just keep on getting busier and busier. So we moved on, and we did a few gigs in Australia, actually, just last month with Eric Hart.
Oh, really? Oh, wow, beautiful.
That was a lot of fun. But yeah, the band is reconfiguring with Nate Wood, and so we're going to be touring in November with Nate. We won't be coming to Slovenia, unfortunately.
Oh,
I've only been once. Love to go again, but maybe next time.
Well, maybe Austria. If you make it in Austria, I'll definitely check you out.
Yeah, I got to say, this was the easiest tour I've ever booked. We had like a 16, 17 day period.
Ooh.
And in about 3 weeks, I'd filled the entire thing. So
wow, okay.
We can't do anymore. It's amazing. I've never had that problem before. So we will. So there will be more. We'll hopefully next year, and
super.
There'll be a new record.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. So, dude, I wanted to ask about you on guitar also. It's like I checked. I'm a guitarist, and of course, I have like a couple of your records, because I think everyone except the pianist one and the solo one has guitar, and amazing guitarists always. Where does this love for the instrument come from?
I think it's a couple of things. I think it comes from quite early on in my life. When I was a teenager, I got really into Matheny, and then Frizzell, and then actually like Hendrix and stuff. And I was interested in rock guitar, and then not long after that, Kurt Rosenwinkel a piano.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
In fact, I saw Kurt in London when I was 15. I saw him playing with Paul Motian's electric bebop band with Brad Shepik and Chris Potter and Steve Swallow.
Yeah, that's a cool
And and then I was like, oh man, and he and Brad Shepik sounded amazing together. And so I was just like, there's just so much you can do with the guitar, and it's such to me it just seemed like a kind of newer sound. I mean, I love the piano, obviously, but and then I got to New York, and I was just surrounded by great guitar players. And it's not like you're not surrounded by great pianists.
Oh no, sure, yeah.
In terms of
in
terms of the just the sort of personalities that were so first of all, well, a great guitarist from Germany. Your picture is frozen. I don't know if you can still hear me.
I'm cool. Yeah, I'm cool. It's I see you quite okay. Everything so.
Okay. Yeah. So there's a guitarist who was there when I shortly after I moved to New York, called Sandra Hempel, who was great. She's from Hamburg. She moved back, so I was playing with her a lot, and then I met Lage and Mike Moreno, and then a little bit later Kurt, and it's just like, all these people are around and sounding amazing. They all, I mean, there was a period, when everybody I do remember doing a session with a drummer called Diego Foglino. This would have been in 2003, right when right when Lage moved to town. I was playing with Diego, and I said, "Oh man, I did a session today with this great guitarist from Norway called Lage Lund." And Diego said, "Oh yeah, does he sound a lot like Kurt Rosenwinkel or a bit like Kurt Rosenwinkel?" Because at that time, everybody was just like it. And of course, Lage did definitely, was definitely heavily influenced by him. But Diego wasn't commenting on anything. He heard just the probability, But despite that, like, there's so much originality with these guys, particularly Lage and Mike. And then I was, obviously I spent a long time playing with Jonathan Kreisberg too. So it was I really like the kind of, I don't know, I like the flexibility of the guitar and the kind of, there's something sort of light.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even though you can make a lot of noise and some heavy sound, there's just something about the fact that you're not going to be playing like, 2 hands worth of stuff all the time. Just kind of light-footed, I guess. It was a combination of like a desire that was already there, and then just the reality on the ground. When I got to New York.
Yeah.
There are a lot of great pianists, obviously, just in my orbit at the time, it was a heavy influx of guitarists. So that's what that was about.
Interesting. Yeah, no, because you basically, like you mentioned, your discography includes, I think, everyone or top 5 young. I mean, not so much young anymore, but okay, like this kind of my generation guitarist, and it's like, it's incredible. I love this. And
yeah, no, it's even better for me.
Yeah, but speaking about the Trio Grande, I wanted to ask you. You mentioned Frizzell, and I love the writing you contributed to your tunes, like Oberkampf. It's amazing, man. And I mean, even your writing throughout your career, you've been really prolific on all your albums. You wrote a lot of music, I think. But like, how did you approach this one? And Upside, it's equally beautiful, but especially Oberkampf. It kind of reminds me of Frizzell, kind of this atmospheric almost vibe and beautiful melodic lines. And how do you approach a tune like that? How do you start? How do you write music like that?
Well, that's a good question. Oberkampf was the only one that was actually written for that band.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because Upside is an older tune. It's on another record. It's one of those tunes that I don't ever feel like I'm quite getting it right, so I need to come. But and then there are other tunes that the first time you record them, that becomes like the definitive version in your mind. I think sometimes when you record something having not played it very much, the recording then defines the tune. Whereas if you play something else and then you record it, on the one hand, you know, you're recording it with more experience and more maturity.
Sure.
But on the other hand, it's just like, oh, not quite. You know, and then you, but yeah. So Oberkampf. Yeah, I mean, that was just, it was an attempt. All of my tunes are an attempt to write something kind of simple. And
Okay.
they all go off the deep end. Well, not all of them, but they very often go off the deep end, you know, at some point. But Oberkampf, yeah, I mean, I've just been sort of, I've kind of developed a you know, very narrow, but like a certain aspects of my harmonic vocabulary that I think comes out in that tune, just with certain harmonic movement that I've kind of explored and found on the piano, and that's where that was coming from. And there's some influence in there. I'm not sure whether I'd cite a direct influence of Frizzell, but actually Jarrett, there's a couple of things that he did on a couple of solo records, and I can't put my finger on it now, but there's a certain type of movement that I'm trying to kind of capture, and that's in that tune. And it's in a couple of other tunes too, because it, you know, nothing ever just stays in one tune. It always bleeds into the other thing. Yeah, but I was really happy with the way that, I didn't know, honestly, this is the same for everyone, I'm sure, but you write a tune and you don't know whether it's any good until somebody plays it, you know.
Yeah.
And so those are the only guys who've ever played it, actually.
Oh, okay.
Apart from Eric on this tour we just did, but you know, and it was just like right away we just did it, and it was like, okay, cool, that's done.
Yeah.
That plays a beautiful solo. And,
yeah, it's a beautiful, really beautiful.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does the writing come fast with you? I mean, like, is it easy for you to write a tune, or are you like, you know, taking a long time?
It's not easy. It used to be much quicker, and I think that's either because I'm slowing down and just and I'm not as good at it anymore, or it's because I allowed myself to put out music that maybe I just wouldn't I wouldn't be satisfied with now. I'm not sure, but I find it really hard. Although on the other hand, it's like it comes like quickly or not at all, and usually not at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
sure.
if I get an idea, then it's like, okay, cool, let me try that, and either it works or it doesn't, and there's not a lot of turd polishing that happens. You know, it's like once you get into that zone, I don't have the patience, and B, like in my experience, when I do that, I end up with something that, you know, that expression. I don't know if you know that there's an expression. It's kind of an American expression, I think, but a camel is a horse designed by committee.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
And this is not a direct analogy, but, you know, I feel like when I'm spending too long over a tune, it's almost like I've got all these different voices coming in and trying to contribute, and you end up with a camel. Nothing against camels.
Yeah. Do you have a problem sometimes? I mean, I have sometimes with when I write, you know, like that you keep repeating yourself.
Yeah.
How do you solve that?
You don't. You sort of. Well, I mean, you can try to learn new tricks, I guess. But Lage put it very bluntly to me, you know, a few years ago. He was like, "Let's face it, you know, we've all got two tunes in us,
and true, man. Yeah.
If you're Wayne Shorter, maybe you've got three. You know, it's like something like he said something. Like that. You know, it's not. You know, it's the other side of the coin of of having a recognizable sound, isn't it? I'm not talking about sound, but like it, you know, sometimes someone writes it. I mean, you can always recognize like a Pat Metheny tune, right?
Yeah.
Or not always, but very often. And the thing that, and of course, if you really like Pat Metheny, then it's like every time there's a new song, you're like, awesome. But if you don't, you're just like, oh God, another
He's
one.
repeating. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, you know, there is a lot of the same. Well, I don't like it when the exact same like vocabulary keeps coming back or anything like that. But there are tendencies that happen that will repeat themselves. With me, I try to set myself an assignment. You know, I remember Steve's. No, actually, I remember Gil Goldstein talking about this in a masterclass he gave at Manhattan School 24 years ago. He said he was talking about, so this is like third, fourth hand. He was talking about Steve Swallow, and he was talking about how Steve would be like, oh, I want to write a shuffle, you know, so I'm going to write a shuffle today, and then he'd sit down at the piano or the guitar, or however he composes, and he would just be completely unable to come up with anything. Like, and then 2 weeks later, he'd be doing the laundry and, you know, taking the clothes out of the dryer, and he'd be like, "Oh, there's the shuffle I ordered," you know. And I do feel like setting myself an assignment, and often it won't come at the right time. It's the best tool I have, like at this stage in my life. So if I just sit down at the piano and try to write something, I'm going to write the last thing that I wrote. You know.
Yeah,
which is not a whole lot of use. So, but if I say, okay, well, this tune, I'm going to write something where, you know, I might sing a rhythm or something. I'll be like, okay, this is going to be the basis of this tune. Or there's this harmonic movement that the best example I can think of for this is a tune of mine called Albemarle, which is on an early record, and it seems to be the tune of mine that people know and sometimes even play. And basically, there's just two ideas in it. It's just like, I really like the Neapolitan sixth movement in classical music, and I want to write something where it's in 5, but it's divided in the middle of the bar instead of in the other way. And then that's what came out, and it was and I think what works about that tune is that there's a real kind of economy to it. It's like it does this and it does this and it doesn't do anything else. You know? Yeah. Whereas a lot of the time I'm just like, oh, but what if I try to do, you know, throw this in, and then, you know, like, and then you end up with just a massive salad of,
yeah, you know, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's a good one. Yeah. I'll use that, actually, what you said. Just to write down, you know, a ballad it's going to be 11 bars. That's it. Or something like that, just to make a, you know. I mean,
well, something I really do recommend, and I should probably get back on this, but I started actually under the influence of my wife, who's a singer, songwriter, and jazz singer. But she was part of a what was called a song club, where it's like a bunch of people over email, and every week someone gets selected to come up with a song title. And so someone puts a song title out to the group, and you get it on like a Sunday, and you have to have it written, recorded, and uploaded to Dropbox by Thursday.
Oh, that's cool.
And she did that, and she, like, you know, she wrote like 8 songs that ended up on her records and were great songs. And so I did, you know, one of those for like jazz musicians with a bunch of people collaborated in that, and several of my tunes come from that. Because someone says, hey, write this, do this, and I'm like, oh, I would never do that. I would never think of doing that. And then you come up with something, and maybe you end up discarding it and breaking the rules somewhat, but you get inspired to do something. That's my kids, as you may be able to hear. So there's one tune called The Pines, which is a ballad, which is on It's All Right with 3, and it's kind of been one of my favorite tunes of mine in recent years. And the assignment was, you have to write a tune where the first chord is E major and the first 5 notes of the melody are G sharp.
Oh, wow, man. Okay.
And
that's fantastic.
You know, like, why would you ever do that? Unless someone tells you to. And you know, so yeah, I think we did like about we got up to like assignment 15 or something with those guys, and then it dropped off for various reasons. But I highly recommend some version of that to get you just get the, you know, because you can't really, inspiration doesn't very rarely just hit. You know, it's got to come from somewhere. Sometimes it has to be forced.
But that's a good one, really. So yeah, I'll try that. You know, sometimes I feel like, you know, I pick up the guitar and it starts like, you know, dun, gung, 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 dun, dun, gung, and it's like, wow, it's another 7/4 something with a groove, you know, like, okay. And then, you know, then you're in that mode and you cannot escape it. It's like,
it's true.
Well, it's a cool one, yeah.
Another thing I'll do, like in the spirit of whoever it was that said, you know, good composers borrow, great composers steal. Something else I'll do is I'll hear a tune that I really like, and I'll be like, I'm going to write that tune.
Yeah, I tried that. I've tried that already. Yeah, that's cool.
And sometimes that gets you somewhere. You know, I've had a little bit of success with that, and you end up with something that doesn't sound anything like what you write, but you know,
it's a nice trigger, yeah, to start. But I wanted to ask you. You mentioned Pat Metheny. You know, like when you were younger, which is I think our generation kind of all got into jazz through that. Almost so many musicians I've talked to, and but. When was that trigger? Want to check what's happening?
No, I think it's okay. I would have heard a scream.
Okay. What was the trigger for you to enter the jazz world? I mean, was it actually Pat Metheny was one of the first records, or
no? It wasn't. I know that. I know, like a lot of people get into, like, you know, they're into pop music, and then they like the guitar solos, and then that takes them to, you know, something else. But excuse me, no, it wasn't that for me. It was very sort of all over the place. Like I hated jazz, and then my dad was into jazz and had records and stuff. And then just one day, like something just clicked, and suddenly I really loved his Oscar Peterson and Duke Ellington records. I loved Ben Webster and Johnny Hodges, and so that was my starting point. And then. And I tried to listen to bebop and, you know, Bird and stuff, and I really struggled. You know, I just wasn't quite there. And then I think somebody for my birthday got me like a Chick Corea. There used to be this series called Walkman Jazz. Where it was like, you know, I'm aging myself here, but it was like cassettes that was sort of like a compilation, right, of different artists. Or no, one artist, a compilation of their work, you know, a bit like the ECM Works series. And someone gave me a Chick Corea one, and I was like, who the hell is this? What kind of a name is that? And it was a really good compilation. Yeah, like it had a little bit from Now He Sings, Now He Sobs, but it had a lot of stuff from like Return to Forever, and, you know, post Return to Forever, like My Spanish Heart and all that stuff, and maybe like 3 quartets, and I just really into that. And then I saw him with the Electric Band in like 1990, with, you know, with like
Frank Gabala and all those guys, and
Eric Marienthal, and I guess that was it, right? And Patitucci, and I saw that band, and I was just like, just completely just blown away. And so then I was like really into fusion, and then through that I got into Metheny, and then I was like, and then I started listening to some of Metheny's more like jazz things, Question and Answer, and Rejoice. Cool. Well, maybe I should investigate, you know, actual jazz, and again, you know. And so it was then that I got into, like, you know, Miles Davis and Coltrane and all that. So it was a bit of a sort of situation.
Did you then start transcribing these guys, like, or?
You know, This sounds so dumb now. I had a 15-year-old student come over today actually, and I was just like, what are all the things I wish somebody had told me when I was 15? Because when I was that age, I was very shy, and I didn't like participate in like program, youth jazz programs or anything like that. I couldn't read music very well, and I was really sort of ashamed of that. And it was so dumb. But yeah, one of the things is like, so when I was that age, I would play along with records, and I would try to play what they were playing. And I thought, oh, this is wrong. I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to like buy the omnibook and read all the songs. It's just there was this weird sort of misguided sense of what was legitimate and what wasn't. But so I didn't spend enough time, directly transcribing people, or like I should transcribe it, I should write it all down. It's like whatever. Anyway, but I did play along with records a lot.
Okay, that's a nice way to learn. Yeah. But you how come you? I mean, it's a stupid question because it makes sense. You moved to New York, right? It's like the town of jazz, but like London in late 90s or even before, like there's so many incredible jazz musicians. Maybe now it's more blooming, but
it seems like a stupid question.
Okay,
but it's actually quite a good one because, I mean, this is just kind of a testament to like how clueless I was at the time. I went to university outside of London, and then I was always sort of excited about moving back to London and trying to be like on the scene there because I admired a lot of the musicians there. There were some great musicians. But I was always a bit scared of it, honestly, because I spent my childhood like going to these gigs and like kind of building up these people in my mind to be, And then when I was at university in a town called Bristol, there was a guy there who was a postgrad student who had done his undergrad at Manhattan School of Music. He was doing film music now at Bristol, and he was a bass player, and we played together a little bit. And he told me about Manhattan School, and he said, "Yeah, they do a master's program. You should do it." And I was just like, "Okay, I'll do that." I think part of me just wanted to keep the education thing going because it's sort of a refuge. Very privileged mentality there, but
yeah, but it's true.
Yeah? But I can't explain this now. It's quite like people don't know what I'm talking about, and neither do I when I say this. But I was scared of London. I was intimidated by it. And so somehow I moved to New York. It doesn't make any sense. I think I didn't really know what I was doing, and I think if I had at the time, I wouldn't have done it. So I'm really glad that I didn't. So that's it. I mean, it obviously it makes sense it makes sense in a very direct way, but I did it like most things in a somewhat indirect way.
Interesting. Like when you came to New York, how was that like for you? I mean, of course, coming from London, it's not like coming from a
but I mean, no, of course, there's a lot less to cope with, in terms of culture shock, and the language is the same. Although we are kind of separated by that common language, as I'm sure that's a term you've heard. When you grow up speaking that language, but in kind of a different way,
sure.
You don't expect to have to adapt the way that you talk, Whereas, of course, if you come from Slovenia, you can't just, that you're not going to be able to just start talking Slovenian in New York to be understood. So I did struggle to be understood for a while. It was really funny, but it wasn't funny. It was frustrating, but it is funny now. It was. I mean, it was exhausting. It was just like so much stimulus, and in music particularly, I had to see time, and I just. I mean, that was a very intense. Like the first several months were just like, pow. And then of course, it became home quite quickly.
Yeah.
New York does that for people. I think. I think you either just are horrified and leave as soon as possible, or you just never want to leave. And I did. I knew very early on. It's like, it's going to take. I'm not leaving until they kick me out, basically.
Did you start going to sessions like immediately, like, and playing with musicians?
A bit, but I found that environment quite. I mean, I did a lot of sessions with people from school, and then people from outside school. There would be some sort of cross pollination there, but the whole jam session scene I found a bit stressful. And honestly, I regretted not doing it more. But then every time I did it, it was really not a great experience until I moved to Brooklyn, which was only like 2 years later. But I moved to Brooklyn, and Vincent Herring used to run a jam session at the Up Over Cafe in Park Slope, and it's no longer there. But I mean, it closed a long time ago. But that was a really fun session. It was a good vibe, and there were always good musicians there, and there were always terrible musicians too. But there wasn't a lot of vibe.
Yeah.
And that was really, really a good experience. I got to know Vincent a little bit, and yeah, that I did. I went to that one a lot. That was a lot of fun. I mean, it's hard, to see. I mean, I do recommend that people do that, but at the same time, there isn't a clear benefit for like saxophone players to go be like the 15th saxophone player to play.
Sure.
And where the rhythm section is like after, way before you start your solo, they're already like wishing they weren't there. And then of course when I started playing at Smalls and stuff and hanging out at Smalls, I started to be present for the jam sessions. Not really. I would never really play. I'd just sort of observe and just feel a bit better about myself and not doing that too much when I was younger, because the environment, sometimes it can be really cool for sure, but sometimes it's just like, there's whatever, like there's one douchebag who's coming and trying to dominate everything, and then people are getting vibed and people are vibing, and it's not very pleasant.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah. I know what you mean. Will, I mentioned in the beginning when we started to talk, like, that you've been, at least in my eyes, extremely prolific as a band leader and composer. You composed a lot of music, but like, how did It's For You happen, and when did you realize, okay, I'm gonna do this now as a band leader? And because the band is killing,
Well,
like it's.
Yeah. Well, that was recorded 18 years ago.
Exactly.
And by the way, it was not supposed to be called "It's For You," and that was a really, like, it was done for this label Sirocco. Actually, it wasn't done for them. I did it myself, and then I licensed it or gave it away. Actually,
okay.
A label called Sirocco. It's in my position at that time, it wasn't a bad thing to do, because it was a label, they had distribution and everything. But this was like before smartphones and everything, and I was on tour in Canada, and the guy at the label sent me the I haven't told this story before, but the guy emailed me like the album cover, the artwork and stuff, and he's like, "What do you think?" But I didn't have a smartphone, and I don't think I had a laptop, and I was only checking my email like at internet cafes every like 3 or 4 days or something. And I checked the thing, and it was that picture with that title, and I was like, "This is all wrong. Why did you think that it was called that?" And he was like, "Oh well, it's too late. It's gone to the concert."
Shit.
Anyway, but that was yeah. My friends just made fun of me so much when that came out, because of the cover and anyway. But it probably wasn't a terrible record. Like it was it was a good band.
Oh, definitely. And the tunes,
Yeah, that was some of my first writing. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't really remember it that way. I don't think I could even tell you what the tunes are, but it, you know, those were people that I had been playing. So yeah, I mentioned Sandra Hempel.
Yeah.
She is the guitar record, and she sounds great. I haven't seen her since. I basically haven't seen her since we did that record because Ken moved back to Hamburg, and I haven't seen her since. Thomas Morgan, Mark Ferber, Aaron Parks. Yeah, Aaron was like.
Yeah, Aaron is like was a mainstay, right? Almost for a long time. I mean.
Yeah, well, you know, we were at Manhattan School of Music at the same time. He was.
Oh, okay.
I was 22 and he was 15 when we met. Yeah, so he did that record. That was really, yeah, that was. I mean, yeah, playing with him. Oh God, I learned a lot from
history.
And we did. Yeah, we did. I mean, insofar as I had. Well, okay. So how did I discover I'm going to be a band leader? Well, I'm an alto saxophone player, man. It's like, it's, you know, you're going to be a band leader or you're going to be an accountant.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
Of course, that's not actually true. Like,
no, but yeah, sure.
People, you know, but for me, you know, I wasn't getting. I'm not like there's a zero. This might sound like bitter or something. There's no bitterness at all. It's entirely down to me and my, you know, the way that I'm, you know, whatever. But I wasn't getting called for a lot of sideman stuff, so you know, that changed after a while. But I wasn't terribly visible or anything, and yeah, so I was just like, well, this is what I'm going to have to do.
Yeah.
So I did, and I didn't have a lot of gigs, but I used to play at the 55 bar like once a month.
Oh, really?
Quiva.
Okay.
So Quiva, who ran that place, she took it over in like 2000, I think, maybe 2001. I was lucky. I played there. I did, so, you know, I did a sideman gig with a great bass player called John Benitez at the 55 bar, and Quiva was there, and she was super cool, and she just said, why don't you, you know, I've just taken over this place, like, why don't you do a gig every month? And I was like, fuck yeah. So I did that for like probably 4 years.
Oh, wow.
You know, it was, I mean, it wasn't like religiously once a month, but it was, you know, I did a lot of gigs there as a leader. So that, you know, that gave me immediately some sort of level of little mini exposure. And I could, you know, and I just called all the people that I admired and wanted to play with. You know, on more than one occasion, I called, you know, I had Chris Potter do the gig with me. And
oh, really?
So,
oh, man.
Because it was just perfect. Because I would like, I get a saxophone lesson basically, you know, in real time,
exactly.
And you know, and there's lines around the block to come to the gig. It's like, you know, no brainer. And he was, you know, kind enough. I mean, really kind to do that.
Did you record some of that stuff? Are there some like live recordings?
Yeah,
or?
Someone did.
Oh man, I have to find that.
You know, there are actually. No, I have no idea where they are, but there was. Someone did record a gig. It was, yeah. So that was really fun, and it's like, oh man, there's people there, you know, so people could hear me and stuff. That was great. Great for me, not necessarily great for them. But I did the same thing with, you know, like Seamus. I had Seamus do, you know.
Oh man, beautiful.
Who else? Like, I don't remember, but yeah, and then I'd call other, you know, and other guitarists. You know, you wouldn't really call a pianist for that gig because the road.
Yeah, it's small. Yeah.
But you know, Adam Rogers did that gig with me a few times, and yeah, and so that was really. I mean, that place is just closed down, which is
I know that's terrible. Yeah.
That was actually the last gig I played was in New York, was last October at the 55 bar with Antonio and Adam and Henry Hay and Pablo Menares. I mean, it's like, you know, New York, man, like where can you do that? You know, everyone gets
exactly.
$100.
Yeah. Did you enjoy? Like, was it stressful for you in the beginning, band leading?
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
How,
But
how, how, how have
still
you
enjoy it.
progressed and learned through the years?
Oh, well, I mean, the thing is, when you only have one gig every month or whatever, like you put a lot of pressure on yourself on over that.
Yeah,
But once you've done, once you've been around the block a few times, you know better than to be too stressed about any one gig because it's it's not gonna make or break you because life doesn't work like that anyway.
sure. Yeah, definitely. But I wanted to ask you about. You said you started to get excitement gigs, and I think the biggest one for you was probably Gonzalo, or still is. I mean, uh,
Yeah.
how did that gig happen? And when I listen to those records that you did, it's just like, I mean, I've been a Gonzalo fan for I don't know, 25 years, and always when I hear his music, it's incredibly complex and rhythmical, and except that one trio record he did, which is beautiful, the more quiet one, just. But like, how did you first land this gig with Gonzalo and to play that music? I mean, how did you prepare for that? And
Well, I mean, I was very so Yosvani Terry, the
Mhm.
saxophone player, he was in Gonzalo's quintet with Mike Rodriguez and Matt Brewer and Marcus Gilmore. They recorded an album for Blue Note called Avatar.
Yeah.
And they were playing. I think that band played quite a lot actually, and they did like a week or something at Birdland, and Yosvani couldn't make 3 of the nights, and he invited me to sub for him, which was
Okay.
that was like, yeah, that was one of those moments, very important moments. It's like you have definitely have some rough times when you live in New York, and I'd probably had a few of those, and then that happened, and it was just really exciting. I mean, the gig itself was just 3 gigs, but it was just
Psychologically,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, me too. I'd just been in love with Gonzalo's playing for a really long time, and so I did those gigs, and fortunately for me, Gonzalo seemed to like me, and he's a mysterious dude. Like you often don't hear anything from him, and he doesn't talk that much either. But so you never really know what he's thinking. But then suddenly out of nowhere, it's like, oh, now we have a tour in Europe. Okay, great. Awesome. So do that, and then nothing for 6 months, and then let's do a record. Can you do this record? And then so we did. I think the first record I did with Gonzalo must have been Caminos.
It's Caminos, yeah.
And that's to this day the hardest music I've ever played. But it was great, preparing for it, practicing it. It was just like shit. Like, don't know how to do this. And it's really fun. It's one of the best things that can happen to you when you practice is to discover something that you just cannot do because then you know what you need to do.
Exactly.
So yeah, and then we recorded that, and recording that, it was like 4 days in the studio. I think it was like 2 days of rehearsal, or probably more actually, and then record. And God, it was just it was fantastic. So so that was cool, and then he invited me to do something for his label, and it was like, all right. So I did Perfectly Out of Place, but right before we recorded that, he suddenly decided he wanted to do a tribute record for Charlie Hayden. So we did that too, and that was really a beautiful experience because we're playing this music where there was no rehearsal, and just the music was not hard to play. It was just just total serenity, and then that band toured a bit, not a whole lot, but with Jeff Ballard in of Marcus, and that was super fun, man, touring with that band. And I mean, honestly, just being able to stand in the curve of the piano and just listen to Gonzalo play like every night was just. I mean, he is something else, you know, like truly. Like there's nobody that there's nobody that does what he does.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you know, that's I asked in the beginning, like your love of guitar and obviously your love of piano is maybe even stronger or stronger, you know, equally because you did that then record, you know, 441 and where Gonzalo is also present. And I just want to ask you about that record because it seems like one of the most incredible undertakings what you did put to yourself, you know, like first of all, already the pianists are, you know, top of the top, cream of the cream, but also the rhythm sections. So it's like, how did you envision this project? And, you know, how did you realize it and to make it happen actually, I mean, logistically and everything?
Well, envisioning it was really just a case of like, there are having done all those records with all those guitarists, it was just like there are too many pianists that I want to play with, and I'm never going to get around to doing a record with all of them. I mean, little did I know, in terms of the amount of effort it took, I could have done a record with all of them because it took so long to get it together. And originally the plan was to have the same rhythm section with all the pianists.
Ah, okay.
And that I'd still be doing it now if I had to juggle all of those schedules and make sure I had the right rhythm section. But in the end, I figured, no, I don't need to do that just for the sake of continuity. There's other continuity. So the first session was the one with Fred and Gerald, and so that was one session, and I was like, okay, great. So maybe I can do the rest of the record in one more session, but it was 3 sessions. But yeah, I mean, I love the piano. I play piano a bit, but and I, you know, I'm fascinated and you know, envious of real pianists, and I just, you know, wanted to I wanted to put myself in the sound world of all those guys, and it was it was a great experience. Each one of those sessions, and the philosophy for it, you know, as I mentioned, whenever I try to write something, I'm always trying to write something simple. And all of these things were planned. All of these sessions were planned to have no rehearsal, because I wanted whatever it was that I was going to write for them. I wanted the freshness that happens in a rehearsal to be captured, rather than do the rehearsal and think, oh wow, that's cool, and then do the recording and it's just like, oh, but I like that thing that happened on the rehearsal. So the recordings are the rehearsal.
Oh wow, okay.
You know, but when you do that, you need to make sure you call the right people. So you know, particularly like the tunes, the 2 most challenging tunes on that record are Love Letters and That Happened. And for those tunes, I would, you know, had to be really very. I mean, all the drummers on the record are
killing.
My favorite drummers, but for that specific task of like nailing something really hard and playing music and making music out of it without a rehearsal, it was like, okay. And you know, so I got Eric for one of them and Obed for another, and it was just. But then I also got to play with Clarence Penn, who I played with a lot over the years, and I love his playing.
I love Clarence Penn.
Yeah, and Billy Hart, who I never played with, and so that was a great experience too, and pairing him with Tigran and Matt Penman was
it's incredible. Probably the first time again, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it was kind of random, and up to the day, I was thinking, oh, is this a good idea? But how could it not be a good idea? It was great.
How did you know Tigran? Like,
that's through Ari.
Okay.
Because when Tigran, like right after he won the monk competition, he was in New York, and he was playing with Ari because Ari was one of the few drummers that could, hang with all that stuff that he's doing. So yeah, he used to play with Ari, and we did a couple of gigs together. Not many actually. He's on Ari's live records at Smalls that I'm on.
Interesting. What about Fred? I mean, like, Hirsch, because he's like an older generation. I mean, I love his everything he did, but like, how did you hook up with him?
Well, he was one of the first people I went to see live when I moved to New York at the Vanguard.
Oh, okay.
And that made I was only 20, and that made a big impact on me. And I had been meaning to. Well, I mean, I'd always been, admiring his music, but finally, Colin Stranahan called me and said that he was doing a gig at Smalls with Fred, and would I like to go and sit in? And I was like, yeah. And so I did, and that's when I met Fred. And actually, the reason we play Work on the record is because the night that I met Fred, I mean, it wasn't actually the night that I met, because I had met him before. The night I played with him for the first time, we played that tune, and I just completely just fucked it up, like beyond your wildest, worst nightmares. And so I just thought, yeah, maybe we should do this, and I should try to get a second chance at it. But between Colin's gig and when the recording happened, we actually became friends because he's a really good friend of my wife.
Yeah, beautiful that you did. I mean, like I said, it's an incredible. Would be so cool if if you had like a 5-6 CD album. This would be like a whole album with each of these rhythm sections and pianist. That would be
yeah, I could do that, or I could make that record another 3 times with another 15 minutes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's, it was really hard to decide who to. Sure. I mean, it was hard. It was hard, and it wasn't hard. It was like, once I knew who I was doing it with, I was like, okay, no, this makes sense. But at the same time, there's like, I did contemplate making it 6 pianists and adding Shy Maestro, but it's just like, nah, I just need to put this out
for now. Yeah, cool. But otherwise, what are your plans for, not to take more of your time, Will? So for this year, are you like as a band leader thinking about something new, or writing wise, or composing wise?
I have a new trio record coming out in I think it's September. It might be
really?
November. On Whirlwind with Matt Penman and Eric Holland.
Oh, just a trio! Fantastic.
Yeah, because that was another thing that I really felt like I needed to do something without chords, because some of my it's like it's kind of an important test for a saxophone player in a way.
Yeah,
I don't know whether I pass it, but I had a good time doing it. I just wanted to, and that session was really, no rehearsal, and like didn't even really. I wrote like 2 tunes, which I emailed the guys, but other than that, we just call tunes. And
wow,
there's a lot of material that isn't on the record. I ended up whittling it down to 6 tracks, and Melissa Aldana joins us on tracks. So that's out. That's called Tripwire. That's out.
Fantastic! Looking forward.
And in November, I will be touring with Trio Grande in Europe with Gilad and Nate, and we're going to France, UK, Ireland, Czech Republic, Sweden.
Oh, fantastic!
Where else? Italy. A few other places, so that'll be fun. And then I think next summer we're going to try to tour, and then probably next year, and we're going to do another record as well.
Fantastic!
So exciting. And then there'll be everything. So everything else remains to be seen.
Sure. But cool, man. Looking forward to the trio record, really, really so much. I love, the Sonny Rollins trio recordings, the Village Vanguard. So
Yeah, me too. Like, so it's those and Kenny Garrett actually that it's made me always want to do something like that. But
Yeah.
I could just keep writing this music that's like needs chords, and I just thought, okay, I got to stop doing that.
Cool. Great, man. Will, thanks so much for taking the time. So
Oh, thank you,
appreciate it.
Samo.
It was so much fun, and hope to catch you in Europe. So.
Dr. Jazz.